It's been almost 2 years since my previous stats effect video, and in the meantime Zos changed a lot of things. So I decided it's about time to make an updated guide, especially since using 2 charged daggers is now the strongest option for damage dealers in some circumstances. So they'll be proccing stats effects a lot. But let's start from the beginning. What are stats effects? Most of the damage you deal has a chance to proc an additional effect based on the type of the damage you've dealt. I said most, because light attacks, heavy attacks, and stats effects themselves cannot proc stats effects. As for the other damage types, weapon enchants specifically have the highest chance. It's 20% at base. Single target direct damage has a chance of 10%, AoE direct damage has 5% chance, each tick of a single target dot has 3% chance, and each tick of an AoE dot has 1% chance. Whenever you forget these values, you can check them in-game if you just search for stats effects in the help tab. Now to give you some examples. Wrecking Blow is a simple single target direct hit, so it has a 10% chance to proc Sundered. Sunfire first deals direct damage and then applies a dot to the enemy. This means it first has a 10% chance to proc Burning, and then whenever the dot's damage ticks, which is every 2 seconds, there's another chance for Burning to proc, which is 3% this time, because it's a single target dot. Degeneration, for example, does not have the initial direct hit, so it simply has 3% chance to proc Overcharged with each tick. Carve first deals direct damage in an AoE, and then applies a dot to every hit enemy. It first has a 5% chance to proc Hemorrhaging on each enemy hit, and then whenever the dot's damage ticks, which is every 2 seconds, there's another chance for Hemorrhaging to proc, which is 1% this time, because it's an AoE dot. Even though each enemy gets their own sticky dot applied to them, it's still considered an AoE dot, rather than a single target, because it was applied by an AoE ability, which contradicts how these interact with champion points, because the dots from stuff like Carve, Noxious Breath, etc. get boosted by Deadly Aim, rather than by Biting Aura. Caltrops is a dot placed on the ground, and with each tick of its damage it has 1% chance to proc Sundered. Keep in mind that sticky dots that are applied to targets tend to tick every 2 seconds, while ground dots tend to tick every second, which works in their advantage when it comes to proccing stats effects. Shadow Silk, for example, is an effect on the ground, but it's not a dot. It's 2 direct hits at the start and at the end. So it first has a 5% chance to proc Sundered, and when it expires it also has 5% chance to proc Poisoned. There are also some abilities that have higher than usual chance to proc stats effects, such as for example Arctic Blast, but this is usually specified in the tooltip. Usually, because in the case of Pulsar it isn't. Pulsar has triple the usual chance to proc stats effects, and you won't find this information in the tooltip. Only in the morph tooltip you see when picking a morph choice. So instead of the 5% other AoE direct damage abilities have, it has 15% base chance to proc stats effects. That's what makes it such a good ability for tanks, as with charged weapon and other modifiers, it will have an almost 70% chance to proc stats effects in an AoE, making it perfect for providing minor brittle in trash packs, and minor breach when combined with elemental blockade. But those were just the base values. There's lots of ways to increase these, and you'll basically never end up with these base values, unless you're just starting off. So let's look at these ways, starting with the most common and then going over the more specific ones. Keep in mind that these are all additive, not multiplicative with each other. Battle Mastery and Flawless Ritual increase your chance to proc martial and magical stats effects, respectively by 60%. And they're not slotable, so with enough champion points you'll always set them active. You can see that the values on the table change, and I'll keep updating them as I add more bonuses. If you're using a distraction staff, you can gain another 100% from the Elemental Force passive. With the dual wield scrubbing ability, Traveling Knife, anyone can choose the Assassin's Misery signature script to apply a debuff to the enemy that grants another 100% chance to apply stats effects to them. The biggest increase to the chance of proccing stats effects can be acquired through the charged weapon trait. If the weapon is in gold quality, it will increase your chance by 117.5% or 235% if it's two-handed. This bonus can be doubled with the Heartland Conqueror set. With that, a two-handed weapon can increase the chance to 470%. There are also class-specific passives that can increase the chance. Wardens have 2% increased chance to apply specifically the Chilled stats effect, with their Winter's Embrace abilities, thanks to the Glacial Presence passive. And Arcanists have 55% increased chance to apply all stats effects, thanks to the Psychic Lesion passive. There is also a vision inside the Infinite Archive that increases your chance to proc stats effects by 12.5% per stack. So its more important part is the 500% damage increase to all stats effects, which enables you to build entirely around stats effects. If you're a werewolf, you can actually apply stats effects with light and heavy attacks. Light attacks have 3% base chance, so same as single target dots. Partially charged heavy attacks have 5% base chance, same as AoE direct damage. And fully charged heavy attacks have 10% base chance, same as single target direct damage. There's also the Threads of War set, which makes your light and heavy attacks guaranteed to always apply stats effects. Now that we've covered chances to proc stats effects, let's move on to the different effects you can trigger. There are 9 damage types in ESO, but we'll ignore Oblivion damage type, as it doesn't proc any stats effect. So it leaves us with 8 damage types, that split into 2 categories, martial and magical. Buffs and debuffs applied by these last 4 seconds, which lines up perfectly with the cooldown of damaging weapon enchants, which, as I said before, have the highest base chance to proc stats effects, 20%. You can increase the duration of stats effects debuffs with the Serpent's Disdain item set, but it usually isn't worth it. Let's start with physical. Physical damage can proc the standard stats effect, which deals 1.64% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 17.3% of your weapon or spell damage, as physical damage. It will also apply Minor Breach to the enemy for 4 seconds, which will reduce their armor by almost 3000, and apply the Sunderer buff to you, which increases your weapon and spell damage by 100. Minor Breach is a very important debuff that you'll need to fully penetrate your enemy's armor. Of course, Sundered isn't its only source. Tanks usually provide it with Pierce Armor or Elemental Blockade, but it can also be applied by Deep Fissure and Fate Woven Armor. There are also 5-piece item sets that apply it, but they're not worth using, because this debuff has so many other more convenient sources. In some builds, damage dealers will want to constantly proc Sundered through the use of Absorb Stamina enchant or other physical damage, to keep up the 100% weapon and spell damage buff. This, in turn, will also keep up the Minor Breach debuff in single target fights. So with reliable DD allies, tanks don't have to pay attention to that anymore. Sundered can also be guaranteed to proc by, for example, Templar's Power of the Light ability, or by the Tarnished Nightmare item set. Next we have Poison, which procs the Poison stats effect, which deals 3% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 31.1% of your weapon or spell damage, as poison damage over 4 seconds. This acts as an execute, which deals up to 100% more damage based on target's missing health. So when your enemy has 50% HP, poison will deal 50% more damage, and at 5% of HP, it will deal 95% more damage. The class that specializes in the poison stats effect is Dragon Knight. They have the combustion passive, which increases damage of burning and poison stats effects by 40%, and restores resources whenever one of them procs, up to once every 3 seconds. They also have access to the Venomous Claw ability, which is guaranteed to proc poisoned with its initial hit. Next we have Disease, which procs the Disease stats effect, which deals 1.5% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 15.7% of your weapon or spell damage as disease damage. It will also apply Minor Defile to the enemy for 4 seconds, which will reduce their healing taken and effectiveness of damage shields by 6%. Additionally, once every 4 seconds it can explode in an AoE, dealing 0.6% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 6.3% of your weapon or spell damage to all enemies around the initial target, including the initial target, and also applying the Minor Defile debuff for 4 seconds. Disease can also be guaranteed to proc by, for example, each tick of Werewolf's Claws of Anguish ability, or by the Turvokun monster set. And the last martial damage type, Bleed, which procs the Hemorrhaging stats effect, which deals 3.6% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 34.2% of your weapon or spell damage, as bleed damage over 4 seconds, and can stack up to 3 times, with each stack increasing its damage by 25%. Hemorrhaging is the only stats effect that doesn't have associated weapon enchantment. There is no enchant that deals bleed damage. Hemorrhaging can also be guaranteed to proc by, for example, Fighter's Guild Barb Trap ability, or by the Unleashed Terror item set. Moving on to magical damage types. First we have Magic, which procs the Overcharged stats effect, which deals 1.64% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 17.3% of your weapon or spell damage as magic damage. Restores 65 magicka to you, and applies Minor Magicka Steal to the enemy for 4 seconds, which restores 168 magicka per second to you and allies who damage the affected enemy. The same Minor Magicka Steal debuff can be applied by the Elemental Drain ability, but it's rarely being used, because magic damage type is very common, so most of the time the debuff will be kept up by random overcharged procs. Not to mention that Elemental Drain's other morph, Elemental Susceptibility, is way stronger. The weapon enchantments that proc Overcharged are Absorb Health, Absorb Magicka, and Prismatic Onslaught, because in addition to their primary effects, they also deal magic damage. Next we have the Flame damage type, which procs the Burning stats effect, which deals 4.5% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 47% of your weapon or spell damage, as flame damage over 4 seconds. It's the most straightforward stats effect. It simply deals damage and that's it. Just like with Poisoned, the class that specializes in the burning stats effect is Dragon Knight. They have the Combustion passive, which increases damage of burning and poison stats effects by 40%, and restores resources whenever one of them procs, up to once every 3 seconds. They also have access to the Burning Embers ability, which is guaranteed to proc burning with its initial hit. Another way to easily proc it is using the Elemental Susceptibility. This ability will proc burning, chilled, and concussed on the affected enemy once every 7.5 seconds. Item sets that are especially good at proccing burning, and are very popular in Infinite Archive because of that, are Runecarver's Blaze and Ice Furnace. Also, other than with Serpent's Disdain, you can also increase the duration of burning with the Elfbane set. It's not something you'd want to use just for the burning itself, but if you're using it for prolonging the Magma Shell ultimate, it's nice to know that it will also affect your burning. Next is Frost damage type, which procs the Chilled stats effect, which deals 1.64% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 17.3 of your weapon or spell damage as frost damage, and applies minor maim for 4 seconds, which decreases damage done by 5%. Additionally, if you're wielding an ice staff at the moment Chilled procs, it will also apply minor brittle for 4 seconds, which increases enemies' critical damage taken by 10%. The class that heavily specializes in the Chilled stats effect is Warden. They have the Glacial Presence passive, which increases chance to proc Chilled with skills from the Winter's Embrace skill line by 200% and increases damage dealt by Chilled itself. In addition to the passive, some of the Winter's Embrace abilities already have increased base chance to proc Chilled, like for example Impaling Shards or Arctic Blast, and the Permafrost ultimate is guaranteed to proc Chilled with each damage tick. Just like Burning, Chilled can also be easily procced with the Elemental Susceptibility skill. And last we have Shock damage type, which procs the Concussed status effect, which deals 1.64% of your max stamina or max magicka, plus 17.3% of your weapon or spell damage as shock damage, which is also increased by 15% if the target has been concussed in the last 4 seconds. Additionally, it will also apply minor vulnerability for 4 seconds, which increases enemies' damage taken by 5%. Sorcerers don't have any passive related directly to Concussed itself, but they have a passive that increases their shock damage, which makes the shock damage weapon enchantment best in slot for them, which means that sorcerer damage dealers can easily keep up Concussed on a single target with that. They also have access to the Summon Charge Achenak ultimate, which deals damage in an AoE and applies Concussed with each damage tick. Concussed is also needed for proccing off balance debuff, when combined with the Lightning Elemental Blockade, which will allow your group to benefit from the Exploiter champion point. And just like Burning and Chilled, Concussed can be procced by Elemental Susceptibility. And that's it for this video. If you have any more questions, you can comment down below, or join our Discord server Wildheart. As always, feedback will be appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and check out my Twitch. Thanks for watching and see you next time.